even if you're committed to a pathway, no matter how slow or fast it goes, you are progressing. The reflection point is what's going to actually provide the contrast.
Every time I sit down to meditate, I can't get in the zone and I can't start meditating. And so I just stop. And he's like, well, no, you're meditating. That's meditation. So, therapy, we've discussed. Basically, it is what it is. You know, you can go as far as you can go. Without it, at some point or another, you're going to need it. The earlier you start, the better. We've established the importance of therapy, talk therapy. So during the course of my talk therapy, I had a couple of places where progress was not moving as fast as I wanted. And so I practiced with a different therapist. My therapist sent me to another therapist that did EMDR, eye movement desensitization, whatever the R is, and neurofeedback. So in the like realm of all these, because a lot of times I hear people just go straight to EMDR, and that I imagine that it's going to release things, right? But it releases them, and I don't know if you have the tools at that point to progress if you haven't had enough talk therapy.
It could depend on your therapist.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Oh, you're EMDR therapist.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because you can have a lot of therapists that are strictly more about the release. They're more focused on the venting quality of releasing the energy or releasing the memory. And you can have some that are actually coaching oriented. What do you do now that you know? And
do the
yes, because I do know some therapists that are very much, now that you've released this, here's some tools and practices moving forward.
Integration.
Of how to integrate it, yeah.
Okay.
So it's not simply just the session work where you are deep diving into the caverns, into the baggage, trying to unlock, because that's really what it is. It's unlock, it's recover certain information, it's release whatever energy was inhibiting progress.
Correct. And that's so I started going because I grew up in Iran in the 1980s. I was born in a war zone, and I was there for like 4 years. And a lot of that was not unlocking, or even in my memory, really, if we're being honest. So I went for that, and that's what it helped do. So there's neurofeedback and there's EMDR. EMDR is eyes closed or open, moving your eyes back and forth while the therapist brings up a feeling. And the Andrew Huberman, because always
shout out. Shout out.
Every single thing he's got a great video on, but he does have a great video on this explaining it, because he's an ophthalmologist plus a neurologist. So if there is such a thing as the greatest specialist in EMDR, he would have to be it, right? He would have to. And so what he explains is the reason why that works is because when we were moving forward before full evolution and where we are now, we would forage for food. So we would move forward, and when we did, we would look right and left to scan things, and that allowed us to peer into our subconscious so we can be really aware. We heightened sense of smell, sound, visuals, and the reason for that was that exact. So that's what we're doing when we're doing EMDR. We're going back, and it's becoming subconscious. And then neurofeedback, I don't know too much about. All I know is that she connects me to a computer and puts little prongs on different places on my head, and she moves them around. And I stare at a computer screen while it moves around. But both of these are very good unlocking devices, I would say. That's the limit of their capacity, though. They're not going to resolve anything.
Well, depending on what is unlocked, sometimes getting back information can actually help solve a puzzle. So the psyche has a natural ability to resolve conflict when given enough information. on its own.
On its own.
Yeah. But when we repress or suppress it because it's a painful situation or it's a painful awareness to have, we don't actually have enough information to make a wise inference about it. If you understand and really understand that we're spirit to begin with, like what we are is not the mind, what we are is not the brain, it's not our nervous system, it's not these thoughts that are going on, but we are spirit. We understand there's a constant wisdom always present. And
Center.
if there's a wisdom always present, that means that there's the ability to interpret what's happening from a higher vantage point. But if I don't give myself the information so that I can actually make a wise judgment or a wise discernment on how to move forward, given what has happened.
From that view.
From that view, from the spiritual lens of it's going to be okay. You will live through this. You belong anyway. It's okay if they left. You're not alone forever. Like
Right.
these are the fears that we have when we don't actually deal with it. We kind of make a subjective call.
Yes.
Things are happening and now they're like this forever. But if I gain back some of that information, I'm able to create a more comprehensive viewpoint, not just on what happened, but on how it applies to my whole life and now how my life is inside of the life.
Which is so important.
Which is everything.
Pretty much.
Which is the whole point of doing any of this work in the first place, is so that we can get higher vantage points.
So real quick before we
Yeah.
go on though. So when I started in therapy, I had a hard time with words like spirit and, universe and God and stuff like that. So let me redefine spirit if I can.
Sure.
So spirit can be defined as anything that basically says in a good place. So there's a part of us. Everybody has good moods and bad moods. Everyone feels confident sometimes and not confident other times. So when we feel at our best, you and I are calling that spirit. Okay.
You could say that that's spirit referred.
Spirit referred.
Because remember, reality is a reference point.
Okay.
We're in a reference point with each other.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
there's a tinge of spirit to it.
Everything is perspective based. All of life is a perspective being experienced.
And different ones.
And different ones. There's
the point.
levels of perspective. There's my
Yes.
immediate sensory experience. If you decide to take up a pen and shove it in my hand right now, that's a sensory based, pain referred experience, where what's
Through the nerves.
And it's sending a signal to my brain, you're in danger, something's happening. As soon as I remove my hand, now I have another reference point. Why did you do that?
Right.
That's another perspective
Brain
point.
trying to figure it out so it doesn't happen in the
Calculating,
future.
So it doesn't happen. And then maybe I have a program or some sort of structure that's built in that I have a previous relationship reference point that I would say, that's out of character for him. He would never do that. Is he okay? But let's say somebody's done that to me before. Then I would say, not this again.
Yeah.
Then I would say, you need to run out of this office right now. This is the same thing that happened last time. So we're always in a reference point. Reality is based upon information that we interpret and then make references for.
So in line of that, right, the reference point being called spirit shouldn't dissuade you. If you don't like the idea or ideology of God, universe, spirit, whatever.
If that is uncomfortable to
make your own.
To acknowledge, then you can put a different quality to it to say the highest reference point that I have towards and about life. The highest reference point that I have is going to be the wisest reference point that I have. It will be also the most freeing reference point that you have. It won't encompass or embody fear. There won't be a separation quality to it. There will not be scarcity involved to it. There won't be trauma informing you. So if you don't have a comfortability with your own spirituality, and that's why you're uncomfortable, not you per se, but if somebody has weird feeling of that's woo woo. Who's talking about that? And it's just you're out of relationship with your own spirit.
Or it could be mine was the other way around. So let me throw this at you.
Yeah.
I was not in conflict, or I was in conflict with my own spirit, we'll call it. I'm going to air quote it just for people that are not believing it right now. But also it was my relationship to that vantage point.
That's right.
Right? So all growing up, I was grown up in a different vantage point. My parents always were fear-based,
Yes.
and if you don't do this, then this will happen. And there was no time spent in the just feeling good and everyone relax. So when I don't have a relationship to it, then someone says God provides, I get upset because it's like what's happening is in my head, I'm saying, you're so, you're the frontal cortex is saying they're so stupid, they think God exists. But what's really happening inside is I'm saying, I hate that you're comfortable feeling God, and I don't want to hear what you have to say. Right. So what I don't want for people to do is watch this and then be like, oh, they're talking about spirits. Like, no, it's not spirit. Well, all we're saying here is the reference point. Have you felt great on a particular day? Have you felt confident? Has everything felt in line, like everything's moving forward? That's your best self. What we call your best self. And the goal of all life is to spend more time in that place.
Yes.
You can call it whatever you want.
Yes.
You can say I was feeling good. You can say I was feeling strong. I was feeling my best self. I was feeling God. I was feeling spirit. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's all the same thing, and it doesn't make one better than the other to call it whatever you want. So that's, I think, the keyest part of that is like, don't watch something like this or something else, and as soon as they start talking about spirit, be like, dismissed. It's like, nope, you're missing good information. There's good information for you in there that you are ready for, and don't dismiss it because of a label.
Absolutely.
But now I do use spirit.
Right. And I'm glad that you explained that. And it's also important to understand that if you are speaking about something that has a quality of truth, we're not going to say truth, capital T, your truth, my truth, subjective reality. It's good for you. It's good, not good for me. That's not the truth. We're talking about things that are not arguably factual about laws of creation,
right?
How we are constructed as beings. Even if you don't have that information or that experience or that knowledge or that understanding yet, there is something that already recognizes it.
Has to be.
So if I continue to speak truth with a capital T to you, even if you're uncomfortable with that, something inside of you says yes to it. Yes. Because it comes from highest truth. There's no arguing with highest truth. You can't negotiate with it. It just stands there. There's no convincing.
Yeah, but
it has a resonance, though. That's the thing, is that all truth has a resonance. It has a vibration that is untouchable, and you can't waver with it. So even if you put a half truth next to it, it doesn't match. It will always stand by itself. What makes you uncomfortable with it is the programs inside that don't yet have a match or an internal reference point for it. You say, I was really uncomfortable because you gave your belief over to God, to spirit, to whatever it is. If you grow up in a home, your parents are God to begin with.
That's it. God substitutes. That's what they are, though.
They are your first.
It's true.
Your first experience of God are your parents. And if that experience is less than ideal, then your experience of God moving into the world is less than ideal.
And you can look, and that's really what happens. So I didn't believe this when I was told by my therapist. Right. I didn't believe it at all. And then later I came to develop that, damn it, she's right. So that's exactly what's happening. Yeah. And I have to deal with this. But here's the issue. Mm-hmm. In today's popular culture, keywords like truths and spirit and things, they haven't been they've been overused though.
Yes.
And and that's okay. You know, there's a lot of us and we all have to figure something out, and things are going to get overused. Like this is just what it is. It's not like 1,000 of us anymore. There's, 8 billion of us.
Thankfully.
Yeah. So, and as and this is why, as we evolve further and further, this becomes more and more complicated, because it's hard to give knowledge to people in a large area and have everyone actually take it in, because it's just like the same concept of if you came home and you weren't hungry just yet, and it's 11 o'clock, and your mom every 10 minutes asks you, do you want something to eat? At some point you'd get hungry and be like, no, I don't want anything to eat. You know what I mean? That's what happens. So that was a problem that I had in this entire process. And luckily I had a good therapist, and at the beginning she didn't like over push it on me.
Yeah.
But at a certain point I was like, fine, I'll start using stupid words like spirit and you know what I mean? I had to. It was just there, and it was a definition. But it will. The one thing I'm going to say is if you're uncomfortable with the idea of spirit or God or the universe or whatever, like, don't worry, because what's going to happen, you're going to transform my definition of spirit or God or any of the universe is not like anybody else's. So I can sit someone down and explain to them, and they're going to be like, oh, that's not spiritual at all. This is like, it's pretty factual. So it will transform. You'll get your own definition. Don't get shied away from words like that. Right?
Right.
Be cool with it.
Be
Just
cool.
be cool.
It'll
be fine. Like, it's gonna be okay.
You're gonna be okay.
Yeah. No, because I wasn't, and it was like a year I wasted reading books that were spiritual, like Power of Now and what's the Esther and Hicks. What's that one? Give and you shall. Yeah, Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
I read that book, and like I was
very useful book.
Struggling with these words. And so now when we're using it, I'm like, but I don't want the like 10 years ago, Kevin to be watching this and be like, I don't want to, you know what I mean? That person needs to hear it.
No. I had a hard time too.
You did too?
I really did.
Really?
Like when I was first given Abraham Hicks, even 7 years ago, I really struggled it's hard to listen to it because of the nature of the language and the reference point that she was speaking from. Because she's speaking from such a higher reference point, I didn't have information available. I didn't have boxes inside of my mind yet to fill that with. And I was really saying, you keep saying the same thing over and over. Where's the information? which is just my tendency to be over analytical and very reductionist about how it is that was my tendency, as a scientist, as a psychological, philosophical born person.
It's hard, yeah.
It was difficult because I wanted processes. And when a person like me wants processes, and you're giving me principles and you're giving me truths that have to be repeated over and over, and I'm like, where's the process? Where's the practice? Just tell me how to do it. And yet she's repeating it. And there's I'm like,
Which brings us right back to everything that we're talking about, right? All we're doing is we're giving a process that makes it easier to intake the information because everyone interprets the information in a different way. So when we say diet, exercise, whatever, these are things that are going to make it easier for you to understand things in general, which will make it easier for you to understand what you need to understand. And then EMDR and neurofeedback are very much the same. They're just breaking things up in your brain that are calcified essentially and shut off. Right. That it's not accepting any more information in this field. It's like, nope, that's opening it up.
Yes.
Letting it out. Maybe it resolves, maybe it doesn't. Maybe talk therapy, maybe you read a book, but whatever it is, it's helpful in its own sense. And that's kind of the tool that it is. It's a movement tool. All of these are movement tools.
They're tools, and they're not all equal for each person. In fact, at one point in their journey, it may be useless. At another part in their journey, it may be the most beneficial thing they've had in years.
Oh, yeah.
So that's important to remember, that if you don't have a good experience with meditation, you're like, that's ridiculous. I can't even sit still for 3 minutes. That doesn't mean that at some point in your future, it won't be the most necessary thing in your life. If you have a terrible relationship with journaling, you're like, I don't even like reading books.
I hate it.
Find an audiobook. Find a book, like this. We're too resourced resourced as a culture,
To just be-
not to go find your immediate practice.
Right.
And not to discount all of the other ones, because maybe at your level of trauma, and that doesn't indicate your level of brokenness, it simply means you didn't have the right one find you yet.
And it also could mean low. If you have very low trauma, some things are not going to work for you.
100%. And people have different brain structures to begin with. What is really available as far as, like, let's say personal development technologies, certain exercises for a standard population of people. Some people on the neurodivergent spectrum won't see the same benefit. In fact, they won't even interpret the exercise. And I've seen that actually happen in some personal development settings where people think, am I damaged because I'm not understanding this? This is not working. But I really caution people not to give up so easily, and also not to discount what works for one person to say, well, that never worked for me. And I've gone through all of these. I've seen people recently where they've gone through 30 years of talk therapy. What is it? When you shock the brain.
That's a form of neurofeedback.
But like real, like electroshock therapy.
Yes, that's active neurofeedback.
Active neurofeedback therapy. I've seen people that have had antidepressants for 25 years. They've gone through EMDR. They've gone through plant medicine. And then suddenly they arrive and I hand them a better set of ways to see the world and life, and suddenly things start clicking. They suddenly click. So it doesn't mean that all of that work was useless. It simply means that you followed whatever was next for you.
Let me just blow every mind that could possibly ever be watching this. That moment was all dependent on all of the work that came before it.
Yes.
Or that moment could not have happened. I had my realization of that.
Exactly.
The first time we did plant medicine together.
Yes.
I remember I told you I even had a visual that encompassed that ideology in and of itself, which was crazy.
It was crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. Because I was having a hard time with the meaning. Like I said, I always had a hard time with spirituality. So I don't like to look into like, why did all these things happen and whatever. It's like, I don't want to do that. But I was forced to. Yeah, and then it works. So it's like it did work. So so we went over the basic stuff. Like stuff that anyone can do, and just diet, exercise, breathing, simple things. And then we went over talk therapy, obviously, because I think we both agree that's like the most important, regardless of your stage.
Regardless of if it's talk therapy or coaching or group work or personal development work, the issue is when you try to look in your own mirror without external feedback. You have to have external feedback. Even if it's a workbook that you do by yourself, if you're not ready to show up in a group or you're not ready to divulge yourself vulnerably to another person, get a workbook and take yourself, because you're having external questions to ask what you would never think to ask. And that's why we circulate, because there's nothing outside of us prompting anything new. We need to be in relationship with people because we actually don't know what's happening on the subconscious level until I'm in relationship with you. And this is why people, let's say in their singleness journey, and they're doing their work and they're like, oh my God, I've done it. Like, I feel confident. I feel like I'm over that person. Like, I feel totally better. And then they get into a relationship and they're like, I thought I was over this. Like, I'm having all of this stuff. And it's like, you did the work to gain awareness and to gain the reflection. Now here comes the real
practice.
Now that comes the practice, so you can't sit there and say like, oh, let me just figure myself out. It's not going to work. You can get a little farther. Why? Because you have more. The moment that you say, I don't know what I'm doing, is the moment that you actually have more insight come.
Because you're open to the idea that you can take in information.
Because you're open to the idea that maybe what I'm doing, there's a different way to do it. Right. And that humbling moment right there gives you more access to better ideas, even through your own self.
Yes.
But at the same time, you don't know what you don't know. And you need the presence of other people, or at least the feedback of other people, or the prompting of other people to elicit a different answer.
You're going soft again. I'm going to say it out loud. It's the talk therapist. Just single person in a room. There's a reason why it's the hardest to do, and it's hard to open up, and it's uncomfortable, and I get it. But if you want to just go to the next level, just go see the talk therapist by yourself. Yes. You don't need a group. A group is nice.
Or if you had not a great experience, because there's a lot of people that haven't had a great experience with talk therapy. Switch.
Yeah.
Switch. Oh my God. It's like a doctor. You don't stop seeing a doctor because that doctor killed it. Killed the whole profession. No, you go find a different one and you go into your search and you don't go in with the whole, oh, this is going to be like this last one because I promise you'll find another shitty one.
Yeah.
You know?
No.
So.
Look, it's the foundation, I think, of everything. But so now we've gone over basic stuff and we've gone over therapy. And then we've even gone through advanced areas of talk therapy like EMDR and neurofeedback that can help.
There's a lot of different modalities in the therapeutic field.
Now, let's go to the me. Did the talk therapy, plant medicine, EMDR, neurofeedback, wakes up in the morning, has a routine, all the basic and simple stuff, the easy stuff that if you just do it and show up, that's enough, right? I do all of those things. Now, let's go into real calibration. Now I have a baseline and I got to get advanced and I got to start actually starting to move these things as quickly as possible. So let's start with my favorite, journaling. You know how much I love journaling. I will do anything. I would run 500 miles if I could avoid journaling. I hate it.
How many people are shaking their heads? Yes. I understand.
I hate it. So it's fine. And I do it. I still do it. And I even have like ways like I half-ass do it sometimes when I can't do it in full. But so let's start with journaling. Why is it so important?
Okay. If you understand that thought constructs are energy itself, like every thought is an energetic expression. It's a vibration. And you have so many different variations that you can have if you put, how should I say this? If I put all of my thoughts into this cup right here, and I just shake the cup, and then once in a while I look inside, and I see somewhat of a clear picture, but I'm also confused by all the other stuff going on inside of it. I'm not really going to work any solution out simply by looking at it or thinking about it.
So you spill it out on the table and take a look at it.
So journaling is dumping this whole thing out, letting it sit, letting it settle because it's going to be all crazy when I put it out on the table. And then all of a sudden I can see that particular area of my thought process without the distraction of everything else. And then suddenly I have a conclusion or an understanding about why it's there. And then maybe I look to the right and I see another picture and how those two connect. And then after a while, then I can see how another picture and another picture and another picture. And then I say, oh, there's a pattern here. Or I couldn't see the pattern because all I would do is just shake the coffee cup, look inside, and every once in a while either be excited by what I see or be really terrified by what I see. Also, or be confused by what I see.
And also, you're tricking yourself. So I do this all the time too, where I shake the cup and I look. Yeah, like, oh, I don't need to write this down. It's right there.
It's right there. It's right there. It's in my coffee cup.
It's not. You need to write it down.
You absolutely need to write it down. There's also a lot of research that suggests that even in the process of putting pen to paper, the kinesthetic connection to the page makes things hard set. And I don't mean hard set like concrete. It means that you were able to actually manifest it onto page.
It brings it to reality.
It brings it to reality. And that doesn't mean that every hard thing that you divulge onto your page is now how it's going to be. Because you also have an intention for journaling that could be literally spilling your guts out. You call that stream of consciousness writing. That's, I'm not going to pick my pen up. I'm constipated mentally. I need to get the shit out. And that works very well for some people that work on anxiety.
Oh.
Because it helps them at least spill it out onto paper.
Just put words and
Just
sentences.
put
Doesn't
words
matter.
and sentences. It doesn't matter. If you have an issue with rumination, stream of consciousness is what will help turn the thought over, because you get stuck on a loop and you're recycling this. You're looking at the same spot in the coffee cup, hoping it's going to change. And it's not going to. So if you actually put it down on paper and you're not sitting there analyzing, a stream of consciousness journaling is not intended for you to find patterns and to analyze. It's intended for you to brain dump. It's intended for you to take the recycled thinking and actually turn it.
Put it out there.
And actually put it out there so that you can go on to whatever the next point of interest is.
You know, as you said it, I kind of realized it is the literal. It is literally a thought becoming reality. It is in the most basic sense on paper, because it is a thought becoming a reality, which is on paper now.
So why we have to write our goals.
So the other part of journaling that I
because that's one part of journaling.
Right.
And I want to preface this to say that people think journaling is the same practice. No. Journaling is a medium.
Yeah.
It's just a method. It's a vehicle where you can intentionally employ that vehicle for a purpose. Journaling is just the act of writing a thought onto paper, but it could be your goals. It could be your affirmations. It could be a reminder. It could be a stream of consciousness. It could be working out a problem. Like, there's 100 different employments for journaling. So if you sit there and go, journaling is ridiculous, and I did this one assignment that one time and I hated it, or that season of journaling is over for me because I'm not getting the same thing I used to get, fantastic. What else could it be?
Try something else.
Try something else, because your journaling practice has changed.
So one of the things that I grapple with all the time is like that, the idea that nothing's happening, I'm not progressing. Wherever I am, it doesn't matter how much I've progressed. I'm like, this is not high enough for me. And so I'll tell you where the journaling really came in handy is I would look back I'd pull out a journal from like 10 years ago and I'll read it. I'll be like, man, yeah. I was struggling with self-confidence in this area here at that time. It's pretty crazy the amount of movement I had. So then in that area, I guess I have had progress. Look, I used to be so detached from the idea that I could be good at this, right? And I was like praying to feel good at this. And then now today I'm here. So it's like, oh, that is progress. And then you can do that 4 or 5 times every now and then when you're really down. And like you think there's no progress. That's a real good way. Just pull out like a 10-year-old journal.
Oh, and so good.
It does make you, it makes you feel good.
It does.
Tracks progress.
It because we're so natural to just move on to whatever's next.
Right.
And even if we're progressing in let's say a gradual way, because we intend to progress, because we are actually not okay with where things are, that means even if you're committed to a pathway, no matter how slow or fast it goes, you are progressing. The reflection point is what's going to actually provide the contrast.
I know.
And you're like, oh my God, the way I was right. Oh, that thing wow, those are the affirmations I was giving myself last year. That's exactly what I am right now.
That's it.
Whoa. I became it. I didn't even realize that. Oh my God, the things that I said I would do 5 years ago, I was putting them down. I'm actually living that right now. No shit. Like, that's amazing, because we look over naturally
we just miss it.
A fulfilled goal because we're already on to the next goal.
I know.
All the time.
You know, well, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm gonna. One of the best moments of my life, I play amateur pool. So I'm in the APA, which is the National Amateur Pool League. I'm ranked. I play and I take it very seriously. So when I first started 5 years ago, I used to watch this group of guys who were the guys in our league, in the Southern California League. They're all sevens size skill level. They're all sevens. And, when they play, they all talk to each other, and they have certain ways that they break the rules with each other that it's okay. And it's like a fraternity.
Yeah.
And the other day I was in a playoff and I was standing there, and one of the guys that I used to like idolize all the time, not idolize, but like really look up to and like, wow, could you imagine being as good as this guy? He was standing next to me watching my playoff, and me and him were talking. And then another one of the guys from the group came over and we were all talking. And then I just realized, oh my God, I'm in that fraternity. I'm the guy. Because we were all talking. I'm like, wait a minute. I am standing with all the guys that I used to, and now they're all friends and I've been playing with them. And when we play, it's a challenge to them to play me. And it's like, and that was one of the best moments ever. It doesn't matter what it was surrounding. It was just that I had gotten to that level that I always wanted to. And that is what the journaling can provide to you. Without a lot of work, really, if you want to be honest. And maybe not to the level of, but it's not a lot of work to read over your old journal. It's a little bit of work to write the stupid things in the first place. But otherwise...
Well, it depends on work. If you count 5 minutes or 10 minutes of your life that you would spend scrolling on social media work.
I do. No, not social media, but journaling completely.
Right. Again, if anything feels like a struggle, this is important to know. All of us to know, if it feels like a struggle, there's no value in it.
If it feels like a struggle, there is value in it.
No, if it feels like a struggle, if it feels like you have to force yourself to do it, you have not created value.
Oh, I see.
There is no value there. So if you know that it's a practice, it's good enough, maybe you've created the idea that it's beneficial. You're enrolled enough in the concept of, it's going to help me. This is a good practice. I've heard it, like, okay, I've seen it work in my life. If you want to stop struggling with something that you do know is good for you, you've seen results in your life or other people, you need to spend time on what the value of it is. What is the actual quality of this? And how is this dramatically impacting my life? How is it impacting my life in such a way that I need this to represent myself differently in all these other areas of my life?
It's crazy. I even have a value to it, and it's hard for me. And it's okay. That's okay. What it is.
And that's okay.
That's totally fine.
And it could just, sometimes, like, I had the same story, because, again, sometimes it's just a story. I, at one point, hated journaling. I hated meditation. Me and this, like, I'm ADHD and I can't sit still for 3 minutes. And why are you trying to, fine, I need to meditate. I think I said that for 6 years. I need to meditate. I need to journal. I don't like it. I don't want to write my stuff down. I used to write my stuff down. I don't want to do it anymore. So I had a resistance to it. And so I remember at one point, I did the same thing. I said, fine, I'll journal. But I realized, I said, the story that was keeping me out of a good relationship with it was the fact that I still liked the idea that I was a little bit rebellious towards it. I had to find whatever story that I had about journaling and rewrite it, because I was a little too in love with my drama about my journal.
I'm in rebellion with the rebellion. Maybe one day.
Because I do. I have a small propensity to rebel in certain areas. A small voice going, don't tell me what to do.
I know.
It's
something about it. It's okay if journaling is hard or meditation or whatever.
Totally.
But you don't force yourself to the point of like pain, but really push yourself to the edge of your comfort.
Yes.
Which talking about edge of comfort, let's go to meditation, right? Because meditation, here's the funny part about meditation. And I saw a video and then this guy said that and I was like, damn it, he's right. He said that, and I can't remember, I think it was, who's the guy, Joe Dispenza?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I have a lot of people complain to me that every time I sit down to meditate, I can't get in the zone and I can't start meditating. Mm-hmm. And so I just stop. And he's like, well, no, you're meditating. That's meditation. You're just letting things pass by. He's like, no, that's good meditation. There is no silence. If you had total silence, meditation would be useless to you. So then actually, if you close your eyes, start breathing, and you're very uncomfortable and you can't get thoughts out of your head and whatever, you're meditating.
You're meditating. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Because the whole point of it is to get still. because you can't hear anything other than what's already regurgitating in your own thoughts. So
which is a process.
Which brings us back to the higher vantage point. It's like spirit. Where's the spirit?
Yeah,
it's true, because the meditation is what helps us actually change the dial of our listening, because listening itself is a frequency. You're on a channel. Listening. Because whether we understand this or not, or whether we want to accept or believe this or not, our thoughts, our mind is connected to a collective mind, and it's also connected to the atmospheres of influence. And whether you choose to see that this is a reality or not, there's a spiritual realm
component of that.
A very influential spiritual realm that is constantly bombarding our atmosphere, our collective consciousness. I'm name dropping these because it is important for people to know these terms, because these are the terms that if you do start to relate or at least become associated to these terms, you're going to find more value in what you research. You're going to find more, you're going to find that your mind is going to open up in a beneficial way if you do start to relate to things like consciousness or expanded consciousness or spiritual realm. These things, because they exist, whether you see them or not. And you are suffering, a person, I suffered because I lack the knowledge of these things. We suffer because we lack spiritual knowledge. So even if we're uncomfortable because we don't have a association, I never grew up with it, nobody taught me these things, it doesn't matter. If you do find that these words are over your head, or maybe you don't actually have like a full definition for them, some of these terms are a little over our head. But over our head simply means I don't know about it yet. I don't have the understanding to process what that word implies. I don't have a picture for it. Nobody's ever talked to me about this. I've only heard this from my woo-woo spiritual cousin. You know, I've heard this. I saw it in an article the other day on Popular Mechanics, and they were talking about consciousness. And it was like, what is this? Everybody's talking about this buzzword now. But there's a reason that this is finding a buzzword, a hashtag, people, you know, putting whatever their knowledge is out concerning consciousness.
Sure.
Quantum physics is all about the realm of consciousness. If you want to have any sense of control over your mental process, you need to understand consciousness. You know, so if these words are escaping you and you find that when people start using them, you check out, check back in.
Yeah.
Just check in. If you don't understand it, you don't have to. You don't have to check out right now. You just had to go, I don't really know what they said right there. Maybe I should look it up. Maybe I should watch a video. Maybe I should just do nothing and let myself be uncomfortable.
Till it relates to you.
Till it relates to me, because these are things that don't really have a very singular, linear definition.
Right.
Because they paint there's a whole realm of understanding about it. There's not just like it's a cup, because when I look it up in the dictionary, it says a container with the ability to be full. You know, like that's a cup, usually used for drinking purposes. When you look at the definition of consciousness itself, it's implied by qualities. It's implied by relationships. So you can link mind to consciousness, but consciousness also implies energy field. It implies universal constructs.
Body.
It implies relationship between molecules. It implies energy informing structures. Like these are all things that if nothing I said had any meaning to you, that's okay.
That's fine.
That's totally fine. But you need to know this if you want to progress in this expanded era that we're living in, where things are rapidly moving.
You have to.
You have to do it, or you're going to get left behind.
And speaking as someone that lives in the mental space of essentially an amateur mathematician, so everything I want facts, figures, I want numbers, because I want predictability and control.
Right.
This was a very hard thing for me. right?
Yes.
So here's a little tip. Just throw yourself in the direction. Don't try and form a conclusion. Just take yourself in the evidence, in the direction
That's right.
of what's being told.
Yes.
Because you're not going to find a conclusion. The greatest minds in the world are trying to figure out how energy stores information.
Yeah.
So, you know, they just recently, well, it was a couple of years ago, they figured out that like one molecule has over like a trillion terabytes of information in it. It could have. They separated two molecules, put them on separate sides of the earth. They perturbed one, the other one shook and was perturbed. They heated one and the other one was perturbed. So you're not going to figure it out. You're not going to conclusion, but just say, oh, that study happened. So there is nothing, so what we call nothing is actually something, and there's some form of communication. That's my direction.
Actually no nothing.
We know that now.
The
antimatter.
There's no nothing. There's just something. And we're like, well, what is in that space? Well, maybe we can't quantify it or classify it because our instruments don't measure it, but we are. And some of we can now with the different calibrated measurement or the metrics that we have are okay.
Mm-hmm. They're starting to acknowledge it.
They're starting to acknowledge it. But what's most fascinating, and it brings me a lot of satisfaction personally, is that if you actually read spiritual ancient knowledge. And I don't necessarily imply religious knowledge, but it is in religious text. There are already answers.
I know.
And we're kind of coming into that emergence between, we think that science and spirituality are somehow different, and they're not. They're just different edges of the same plane.
We can't forget. So right now we live in a science-based world, right?
Yeah, reductionist.
But 10,000 years ago, they did not. They lived in a spiritual-based world, so they were more open to it. So now we ask questions like, how did the Mayans know how to put a calendar together? It's like, you don't know. They might have just been so open. That might have been their science that they relayed. So they were able to gather that information much better and easier. Therefore, they had some advanced information. It's possible. That's what happened.
That's right.
So
yeah,
I would say shake it off because it's not going to work if you keep fighting it. I have that problem.
No, nothing works if we keep fighting it. And I would dare to say that if you do feel resistant towards an area, or maybe your internal bias has you just judging the shit out of it, like, God, it's ridiculous sounding, and I would say that's the area you need to lean into.
Yeah.
100%.
Because maybe meditate.
Yeah. If you have all this, I need to meditate. I've been saying this for a decade now, and my therapist has told me, and my wife has told me, and even my kids are telling me now. It's like, you should probably sit down. And it's important to understand that meditation isn't a one-size-fits-all as well, right? It took me 7 months to do that thing that Joe Dispenza was talking about.
To just let it pass.
To learn to meditate for 5 minutes.
Joe Dispenza, by the way, very cool. I just recently found out, like, I know I'm hopping into, like, Michael Jordan, pretty good basketball player. So, yeah.
He kind of does this, this meditation thing. He's okay on it.
He throws the ball through a hoop.
He wrote a book. That guy, he had a show,
Yeah, I caught on a little late. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But he's got, like, little good clips where, like, it has things make sense really well. So
you should actually watch the show Rewired.
Yeah,
it's a show. It's on Gaia. It's Joe Dispenza's explanation of actually a lot of the neuroscience that we're talking about, not just concerning meditation, but concerning reality, how our words create reality, how the mind and the brain are actually working together to change your field of attraction, all these different words that we're talking about, but he actually gives the science behind it.
I believe I'm watching snippets of that show.
You might be.
On YouTube. That's what's happening. So,
my little kid self was like, the graphics. These are beautiful.
Yeah, they got to go quick. I got 30 seconds. Give me all the information I need right now.
This is shiny and sparkly. I love it.
So let's talk about breathing next. So breathing has a great way of controlling your central nervous system, I would say. It's probably the main, like, component of is the central nervous system, no?
Yes.
Okay. And advanced breathing techniques, those are going to be something that are more like a fire extinguisher for me. There's a fire. I need to put it out right now. How are we going to do this? I'm a high anxiety, and then I go into my breathing and bring it down.
Right.
When I'm not there yet mentally.
Yes.
Is that generally the best use of breathing?
Well, I mean, the best use of breathing is living.
Other than living school.
I say that really kind of my heart hurts a little bit because the amount of people that I've been able to work with that actually don't breathe well. And if you don't breathe deeply, if you don't breathe fully, you actually do create pathways of anxiety in the nervous system itself. I myself, at one time, I had a physical or massage therapist go, "You breathe backwards." This is back in the day, and I had this realization. I was like, "Oh, because I'm always trying to suck my stomach in." 20 years old at the club, and you're trying to be like, and I realized, oh my God, so many girls my age, we suck our stomachs in, so we end up breathing backwards. Where instead of inhaling and our stomach expands, we actually
do it the other way around.
Do it the other way around because we're trying to keep tight. We're trying to look a certain way, and it actually gives so much tension to the body and so much tension to the diaphragm that you end up doing it backwards.
I didn't even think about that.
That changed my whole world because then having to train myself to breathe properly was its own challenge.
Breathing is a whole thing. And I told you, I once got kicked out of a session with a breathing coach. I frustrated her so badly. So it's a whole thing. And I don't think about it on like a continuous basis. I usually use it as a tool to calm things down. But breathing in general as like a practice for like how you're saying it is like learning how to breathe effectively.
Learning how to breathe effectively, but also paying attention to when you're not breathing effectively. Shallow breathing can be a response to stress. And when you're shallow breathing, just a lack of oxygen itself slows down every process in your body. It slows down every chemical process and every energetic process. So if I am not breathing like this and I'm tense, what I'm actually doing is that I'm creating a static response in my body where nothing is flowing, nothing wants to move, and that's actually the foundation for overwhelm. And so if you do catch yourself not breathing, simply, just a really
one
quick
of the best
one
size.
like that.
And that's your central nervous system just relaxing.
It alerts the brain and it alerts the nervous system and it says, hey, parasympathetic, turn back on.
Turn back.
You need to, we're fine, everything's okay. And something as simple as just alerting your body, we're not breathing, is enough to start kicking in the relaxation processes. It's enough to also tell the brain, whatever you need to do to supply oxygen to the rest of your body, you need to do that right now. Do it now, because we're about to go down a pathway. We don't want that.
And you can do it under stressed. So
that's basic.
Putting it, in putting it down on the list, I didn't even think about it on like an ongoing. And my previous assistant is a Pilates coach, and she used to always
breathing in Pilates.
She'd say breathe in deep, and I'd breathe in deep, and she'd be like, "You're not breathing in deep." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I am." And she's like, "Well, I'm not seeing your rib cage expanding, so you're not." Right. And then so I guess it can be a micro process that you program yourself into too.
Absolutely. And a necessary one, because you can't get to the breathing practices per se until you actually can train your whole core to breathe properly, because you're not going to take the 4-7-8 breath or the prana breath. Your whole body's going to spaz up if you don't actually do a full breath physiologically correct. And I'm not saying that there's a perfect way to breathe, but there's a better way to breathe where you're actually expanding your muscles in a proper way so that you're getting a full inhale and you're actually able to fully exhale, because we do half breathing so often.
And that's why it's more in the advanced column, is because now you're taking like deep rooted stuff and information that's sitting deep in there, and that's how you're bringing it out. So
it's just on the nervous system too. You got things that are stuck all over your body. When people talk about like, oh, I hold emotions in my body, and we all do.
100%.
You can end up in your organ. They could end up in the crevices of your vertebrae. They can end up in your muscle tissue right here. They can end up anywhere that it decides to inlay and overlay and just rest. It rests in your spot because your body has this amazing way of storing garbage.
And for anyone that doesn't believe it, I'll give 3 examples where that information is stored in your body pertaining to what kind of information it is. So when you're stressed, when you're on a deadline, when you need something to happen faster and it's not happening, where does it? Right here. So everyone holds their shoulders up. When you have like something dropping fear, a very bad thing is happening or is about to happen, where do you feel it? Bottom of your stomach. That's where you feel it. If it's anything romantic based, a lot of times you actually feel it in your heart area. It's crazy, but that's just how it works. So the breathing accesses, instead of a general, my nervous system is tense right now, everything is tense, the breathing can go into certain areas and release things, and that's an advanced technique of getting information back out, because it went there and stored, and now it's coming back up.
It could also be very simple too, because if you are already in the process of working with your trauma or working to overcome or break through something, and you get triggered. So you get triggered and your nervous system has this fight or flight response that goes off, and you feel the actual sensations in your nervous system. You feel the tension in your muscles. You feel your heart racing. You feel even your blood pressure going up. You can feel like the tension in the back of your eyes, or the energy like swirling if you happen to be really sensitive like that. Your breath can actually help you move through the trigger, can help you move through the moment, because sometimes we get lost in the whole physical.
Too much happening.
It's like it's an overwhelming sensory experience occurring, but the breath is one way to actually roll through it. We call it rolling through it. You can roll through the trigger instead of looking and staring at all of the symptoms that are happening. Breathing is just one way to help move whatever response at the subconscious level is occurring in that moment. It will just help you roll through it. Right.
Which is also why kids that play sports competitively tend to have better emotional wherewithal, because they experience that. So breathing, definitely important, definitely an advanced technique, belongs on the list. Let's talk about stillness though. What, why, and when? What's the use? Give us practical applications
of why stillness matters.
What is stillness?
Stillness is its own definition: to be still.
Okay. Now, we're not talking about sitting and being physically still. We're talking about mentally still.
Oh, both.
Both. Okay.
Because sometimes to be mentally still, you must be physically still.
It does help.
Yes. You could be still mentally as you're walking. You could be still as you're even doing something like a sport or running or house cleaning. You know, that could be. But when we talk about stillness, we're talking about literally sitting down or standing or laying, and you're letting energy rest.
Expel. Mm-hmm. So part of that being, and you and I have discussed this, my favorite thing is stillness, because I have found that thoughts are much more, not just profound, but they can be more profound.
Yes, it can.
But they're much more calculated when I am still. So the first thing I will do, and this is a form of stillness, is there's 7 things happening and everything's running. Denise hates this. Denise is my assistant. But as soon as 7 things are happening and it's getting too much, I'll just stop.
Yes.
And I'll just sit back.
Yes.
Take a breath. And she's always like, you got to do things. I'm like, I'm not doing anything.
You're not doing anything.
I'm not. I want to calculate my way out of this. We're not making mistakes. Let's just relax. And that's one form, very like low level, I would say, stillness, all the way over to sitting at home, relaxed, no TV on, no nothing, and just letting my thoughts enter. And that's a different form of stillness.
Yes.
And
Yes, it is.
process of self-evaluation happens at best in stillness. No?
Yes. It's like so perfect that he was like here in the middle of stillness.
In the middle of stillness. That's what...
Because if I didn't practice stillness, it was once upon a time where I couldn't handle that. There was once upon a time where I was... So the bothering portion is I have an idea of how this should work, right? I have an idea that he shouldn't be in here. I have already an understanding about his tendencies, his propensities, his patterns. So then I cross-reference. Should those patterns belong in here? This is like what's happening at a micro level, right? So like those patterns shouldn't be here. Why shouldn't they be here? Because they present a threat. A threat to what? A threat to my attention. A threat to my focus. Well, I don't like that because I want my focus to look like this way. Well, if my focus looks like this way, that's going to be a threat to that. We don't like that. So then all of a sudden something would go off in my nervous system and my nervous system would tense up. But because it would fix it, you need to yell at it. You need to, like whatever it is, we need to end it. We need to control it, right? It's a very simple subconscious response that says something is out of place and we need to move it. I don't like what's happening. We need to change it. Right? Like the expectation is not fitting the reality. The expectation is you're out there, you're not in here. All of a sudden, now those two realities meet and we have to shift. We have to assess. We have to take a higher vantage point and go, how can I create a better resolution here? And so there was once upon a time where my whole body would go off and I would rush at it.
To fix
quick. Because I've been practicing stillness, because I know how to be still, because I know what goes on at a subconscious level for me regarding those little threats, because I've done enough work to know, why are you acting that way, Jamie? Why do you react? Why is your body doing what it's doing? I can feel the nervous system response in my body as he comes in here. I feel it from the bottom of my toes to the top of my head. I feel the tenseness on my skin and I go, put your feet further into the ground. So, okay.
Physical practice.
Put your feet further into the ground. Put all of the energy that's going on from the top of your head. Now, put it down. These are stillness practices that I've had to learn to overcome certain anxious responses. Certain responses where I go, uh-oh, what happened?
Stillness really is the opposite of anxiety. If you want to be honest about it.
It is you could say it's a counterpart, right? So if anxiety was the symptom, stillness is the medicine.
Medicine, absolutely.
Right. So but the stillness is a training yourself to be at ease.
And a personal, and this part of it actually varies from person to person, but my personal goal is to have the highest amount of stillness for the longest amount of time. That's what I'm looking for in life. Yes. It's my purpose.
Then you're going to be completely in a meditative state always.
Maybe. Whatever the hell it is, doesn't matter. As long as it's that, I'm good.
I'm just like, oh, you want to be in stillness forever. Okay, essentially what you just said, I want to be in stillness forever. Another way of saying this, and I'm going to go straight there.
Go.
Is that you're essentially saying, I'm going to be seated in the presence of God.
Yes. After last experience, I can agree with that reluctantly. I'm going to be seated in the
presence of God all my days. And you can practice that because that's essentially what we're wanting to do, is train our reference point. Is to say, I'm going to sit in that stillness. I'm going to sit in the presence of God. And I'm going to do that beginning with meditation. I'm going to be doing that beginning with prayer. Well, then we go into, what is prayer? Well, prayer is an act of stillness.
And, we left prayer off of this. Oh, no, we have spirituality, but we should have had prayer right up there.
Prayer is prayer is foundational for stillness.
And foundational
for everything, but it's because you are actually you're training so many levels of yourself. through prayer.
And let's define prayer. Prayer is not, please God, give me a bicycle. That's not prayer.
It's a conversation.
So prayer is not, please give me this, don't give me that. That's not, it's a form of prayer, but it's not the relieving kind that you and I are talking about.
No. It can be only because you're recognizing in the moment that you're not alone, right? So if I understand that I'm in communication with God, if I understand that I am not alone in my situation, even begging and beseeching is an acknowledgement that God can provide.
Something else there that's helping you in that moment.
It could acknowledge I'm not alone and God has the power to do what I cannot. Even at the lowest level of begging and beseeching.
It's still doing that.
You're still saying, I don't know, but you do. So it's a low level, but prayer itself is a conversation. It's like a conversation, as though if you and I are having a conversation, which means there's two parts to that. There's the communal aspect, which is understanding it's a two-way thing here. And it's also the listening portion, which is its own frequency. Its own frequency, right. And you're training that because God is always speaking.
Right.
Always.
So the easiest way that I've found to hop into that mode is with another stupid keyword, which is gratitude. So I just go over, that's one of my favorite ways where like if I find myself sitting down and like begging and like just, it needs to stop, please make it stop, whatever. I go backwards and I go, okay, that's not working. Obviously, let's focus on what is good. It's like 10 years ago, me would have been ecstatic to have today me problems. They're great big problems. You know what I mean? They're real problems. I didn't have real problems 10 years ago. Yeah. So it's like, let's start with that.
Yes.
And sometimes there's nothing wrong. Sometimes I'm just like, let's do I walked into my garage the other day. It wasn't the other day, it was Saturday actually. And I just looked around and I was like, I got so many tools. This is the best. And I was like, I'm going to go sit down and just be grateful that I have so many. It's so awesome that I get so many tools. It's the best. And I just spent like 20 minutes on that.
Yeah.
And it felt good.
Yes.
And that's it. There was no more than that. That's prayer.
Because it could be, that's prayer. That's
Easy.
prayer. It's so easy. We don't understand gratitude as a neuroscience as much as it is a emotional training tool. Because we all have, and Tony Robbins talks about this, we all have what's called an emotional home.
Okay.
Where we spend time in between a couple of emotions, typically. So let's say, like, I spend a lot of time near anger.
Okay.
Things frustrate me. I'm easily irritated. In fact, maybe a long time ago, I had a tendency to be impatient. And so when things wouldn't go my way, I'd get irritated by it. And after some time, it just became a disposition. And then after some time, that disposition became part of my personality. Because your personality isn't to be pissed off all the time. But if people know you as the pissed off guy all the time or the easily irritated guy, you're like, oh, that's just how I am. No, it's not. You were developed that way. Nobody comes out of the womb pissed off. So if you think about, if you go back and say, well, wait a second, what emotion am I feeling often? That's your home. You can go, you're not always angry. You can be happy. You can be content. You can be excited in moments. So you fluctuate on what's called the tone scale.
Right.
You have emotional tone scale going high bliss, like the bliss state. Like if you go to the work of Richard Dawkins, it's a book called Power versus Force. Mm-hmm. And he outlines, it's a frequency scale. It's a vibrational scale based off of consciousness. But every level of consciousness comes with a set of mental ideas and also an emotional match, like an emotional match. So at the very bottom, you would have shame. It's the lowest.
Shame's the lowest?
Shame and apathy.
What's apathy?
I don't care.
Okay.
I'm numb. I've checked out. I don't care. It's like full resignation.
Okay.
Apathy is there's nothing happening there. That is actually the frequency of death, because there is no movement. It's beneath movement. It's I've given up. If you have a tendency to, not a tendency, if you have found yourself in a state of apathy, whatever it takes to move out of apathy, you need to do. Because apathy is the graveyard.
Okay.
If you feel like I've given up, you've checked so far out of your ability to navigate your life that you might as well call it death. Because mediocrity is death.
Apathy, then I'm going to look this up and because I do the I don't care a lot.
Well, there's I don't care, and like describe your I don't care, because it's not the same thing as I've given up.
Yeah, that's what I'm slowly realizing. My I don't care is like, let's say I'm out somewhere and someone insists on being annoying. I'll just be like, okay, well, that's just what they're going to do. I just
that's
really
acceptance.
don't care. Okay.
That's acceptance. So you're like, that's fine. I don't care. You just said I accept the conditions of the environment and I'm okay. I have no resistance or fight towards this.
Yeah.
That's I don't care. Like,
that's
whatever.
not apathy though.
No, apathy is like I don't really have. I have no power.
And I've been there before too, but not
it's
often.
Deep depression.
Yeah.
It could be deep depression, deep grief, deep loss, where you've reached the end of hopelessness in that area. So apathy is like the bottom, because there's no movement. And when there's no movement, we're static, we're stuck, we're not living. And so if you're not creating something in your life, you're actually disintegrating.
I'm
you're
surprised to see
apart.
shame down there.
Shame is down there, and this is why oftentimes we won't relate to the shame, because it's so painful to feel. We will actually cover it up. So if you're not in your deep shame moment right there, you're probably more in sadness, fear, or anger. Because as you move up the tone scale from shame and guilt, you actually move into like sadness, and from sadness into fear, and from fear into anger, and from anger into curiosity, and from curiosity into courage. You see, we continue to move from a powerless into a powerful state. And so something like gratitude that we were talking right there, if you can find, and there's some people that literally can't find gratitude. They have lived
I have moments like that.
So long. And so have I.
Yeah.
There was a time in my life where I was like, I don't know what you expect me to be grateful for. Like, look at the conditions of my life. I don't know how to do it. And unfortunately, what that is caused from is a programmed response to look for the pessimistic route. You can actually train that. Like you're either looking for what doesn't work, or you're looking for what works.
Right.
You're looking for what is working well, or you're looking for what will never work well. So like there's routes that you can take, pathways you can take of perception, right? So that's a pathway of perception right there. So at one point I had to realize I was looking for everything wrong. And therefore I couldn't find gratitude, because I was always focused on the worst. I was focused on the worst. And we understand that what I seek, I will find. So if I look for what is wrong, I'll find more of it, because that's my point of attraction. That's my interest. So gratitude helps actually train your emotional muscle to access the higher emotions. That doesn't mean you can't feel them. That means you're disconnected from the experience of them. So if you're disconnected from an experience of peace, an experience of love, an experience of appreciation, an experience of empowerment, gratitude at a very basic level can help train that aspect of you to be available for it.
To it.
Yeah. Right. So it's something as simple as, I remember when I was taking myself out of that mindset, I had a gratitude practice for a year. Every night I would just write down 3 things. And my goal was to make a list of 3 different things every night. So I would have this whole list. This is back when my son was born, where the first year I was in such a deep state where I was like, I gotta dig my way out. I gotta find things that are working in my life. And so I made this list like all of these things are going to be completely different things. I can't repeat. And I saw myself halfway through
that's hard.
It was hard. It was hard. So I wrote this list down. I kept it on my phone. I was like, you're not going to repeat anything because you need to see bigger than what you already see, Jamie. And so by the time I was halfway through, I started recognizing that my list of items would change. It would go from like, I'm so grateful for this king size bed I get to sleep in, to things like, I'm so grateful that I'm no longer addicted to alcohol. I'm so grateful that I grew up in the home that I did. It would start to expand from these materialistic or minimalistic.
Stupid little things to like the big things.
Right, but even like the stupid little things, they mean something in retrospect or in the totality of, let's say I could have been born at a different location, at a different time, in a different economic class, in a different set of freedoms. So it's like, then you start thinking, oh my God, my life is bigger than what's inside this room right now. My life is bigger than this problem that I have. And that's what helps expand your internal reference point. So then you start going, well, maybe I'm bigger than that. Maybe I can be more than I think that I am. It starts to unlock who you are. Idea. Right.
That's interesting. So then maybe a good place to start as an exercise, right? For someone, and I was just thinking about this, is to take an area where you think you have no gratitude and then find it. And that doesn't necessarily mean think until you can find the littlest thing. That might mean make the situation. So let's say you're single and you don't want to be, and there are no opportunities, you believe. And so you're just sitting at home and you feel terrible about that. And then you make the decision that I'm going to find one thing to be grateful for. And you get up, get dressed, splash on the cologne and fix your hair and shower up, and you go to the supermarket and you just smile at every girl that is cute, and then just come home. You don't even need to do it. Don't talk to anyone. Just come back home and be like, I'm grateful that I got the idea that I saw 3 girls that were cute that I could have talked to. I didn't, but I'm grateful for that. So start on a little scale to make it an exercise, and then it will transform itself.
Yes.
Because that's kind of what's happened with me naturally, is like I started at the little things and then it just kept expanding. And the funny part of all is my life didn't really actually change physically. I just noticed one day I'll walk in and I'll be like, it's so great that I get to live in this house. And it's like, it's mine, like I can punch a hole through that wall right now if I feel like it. And then I'll patch it up. Nobody can tell me no or yes. I can do whatever I want.
That's an acknowledgement of freedom.
It is.
Oh my God.
But
when you acknowledge freedom, that's like, because that's the highest experience that we're seeking.
Is freedom.
Is freedom.
Freedom of choice, freedom of
freedom
everything.
of choice, because that is spiritually what we are. Spirits. As spirits, we're free. No, but it's true. As spirits, we are free. So it's understanding that you do have a freedom that is inherent to your design, and you've lived this life inside of systems and architecture of the community that you lived in and the family that you lived in, and all they've done is tell you you can't, and you won't in here, and there's limitations. Now that doesn't mean that we're bad. It just means that at some point in your evolution into adulthood, there's a sovereignty that you have to consider to go, oh, I'm on my own now.
Yep.
Oh, I can choose anything now. Oh, actually, I don't have to be a part of this or a part of that family belief system.
I tell my nieces all the time when we're together,
grow up.
There are no adults here. We can do whatever we want. It is. And so freedom is important in that sense.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything.
But just that little act, it's like the difference between something, taking the time when you think you have nothing to be grateful to the time that you are grateful is kind of in itself very just idea changing for you, because you'll see that the same exact things that you weren't paying attention to a month ago, all of a sudden now you're so grateful for it. And you're like, damn it, I was living in this house and this whole time I wasn't in like actually taking it all in. Yeah, I just said mentally like, yeah, I have a house. That's great. But I didn't suck it in. I didn't walk down to my garage and pick out like this special wrench that I hunted down for 3 months and be like, this is awesome.
Right.
I own this. Yeah, it's mine. I get to do whatever I want with it. So
that's so true, because the law of familiarity, it breeds. So we have what's called the law of familiarity, right?
Which
so
is just getting numb to what you have.
You get unattentive.
Good or bad.
You get comfortable. Mm-hmm. So comfortable could look like contempt in relationships, where you stop honoring or valuing the person because you're too familiar now. They've gotten used to your shit. So you don't feel the need to maybe position yourself or posture yourself in the relationship the same way anymore because you're familiar. It's like, oh, they're still here. Oh, okay. Or there's a lack of honoring somewhere.
Yeah.
Familiarity. It's just becoming comfortable with the situation at such a you're becoming so comfortable, you've lost your presence to what's happening, the meaning of it, the impact, why it was there in the first place, what you loved most about it, what you valued, what all of your interest went into creating because of it. So it's like the same thing that happens with any goal or anything that you desire, and then all of a sudden you have and you go get and you're like, that was lovely, because what we're really in love with is the pursuit of life instead of the haviness of the thing. Although haviness matters, because haviness it really denotes possession. And if we have possession, and I don't mean like control, I mean ownership. So if I know that I possess something, especially if you don't realize that you actually possess your own soul, you're in trouble. Because now you're at the whims of everybody else's judgments and platitudes, and now you're having to reconcile why you're so different. But when you are familiar with something, you actually lose your importance of it. So that's the thing, that gratitude. The pursuit was over. So then I stopped paying attention. And this is where relationships die, because familiarity is, you don't do the same things as you do in the beginning. And so this is where gratitude echoes across your whole life, because it allows you to be present to what was important to you. It allows you to actually place value on things that go overlooked, or they go into the background, or they just kind of fall into the part of life, or that amazing espresso machine that you wanted for 6 months that you couldn't afford because it was $1,000, and now you have it and you're like, this is the best espresso machine ever. And then at one point, maybe you got used to it 2 years later, unless you put so much value to that thing that you make it an experience every time that you go get a cup.
Which works.
So if you think about things that you become familiar with, you actually lose the experience of that thing. Is what's happening. So what you did by creating gratitude is you created an experience out of the havingness of it. So if you're in a relationship with somebody and it's growing stale, cold, we're just not who we used to be, you're not experiencing your relationship. You're in it, you have one, but you're not experiencing it. It's the same thing with your tool shed.
Yeah.
You go down, you're just like, wow, you're experiencing the havingness of it.
So funny enough, I have a what I guess they call a mental illness, that low latent inhibition it's called, and it doesn't allow me to do that, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. So that does not happen for me it can happen for me, but it doesn't a lot of the times because of that. So that's kind of.
So then gratitude is your medicine.
Gratitude is a medicine.
Right.
But and that will bring it right back to that initial feeling that you always wanted anyway.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point of, and so gratitude as prayer really, really works.
Oh my God. Yes. Because even if we talk about, I prayed about it. I asked God for an answer. I was hurting. I was saying, can you please help me out of this situation? if we understand that life is something to be begged for, then all I'm doing is reinforcing that I don't have it.
What I want.
I don't have what I want. And if we know anything about the way our mind works as far as our attention, and if we know anything about attraction and how it is the thing I focus on gets bigger. If I focus on my problem, it gets bigger. If I keep saying I don't have my expression machine, I'm going to focus on the fact that it sucks that I don't have it. And all I'm going to do is get farther away from that thing. It's the same thing. I'm out of relationship. It sucks because I don't have a relationship. I want a relationship, but I don't have a relationship. All I'm doing is I'm reinforcing a wall in between me and that thing. And if I do know how the universe is echoing and mirroring back to me the fact that the things that I'm talking about, the universe and all of creation are constructed and designed to mirror it.
Reverse it.
Just
Turn it right back to you.
Right. It's not like, oh, the universe is out to get me. No, the universe doesn't care. The
And
universe
there's a science to that, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's easy. So when I was in the beginning of my career, and I'm going to break the science out as quick as I can here. When I was at the beginning of my career, I would take any client, any job, whatever. Then as I got better and better at my job, then I got more discerning. Then I got to a point where I was just like, no, I just take what amuses me now. And then, so now we talk about the laws of attraction, and you go, why did this person run into this person? It's like, because when I'm out at a dinner and I'm talking to someone and I'm like, this guy just told me he dropped $1 million, purchase because he just didn't want to deal with these stupid small things. Like, this is my kind of people. And
Yes.
We're friends now.
Yes.
It's like, and then you gather that mindset. So the laws of attraction are not some just mystical. It's science based.
Yeah.
If you think
It's observation based.
there's girls in abundance for you everywhere, you will run into a girl and she will see you and know that you feel like there's girls in abundance for you everywhere, and she goes, this is the guy I want.
Yes.
That's the law of attraction. It's not complicated.
No. It's just magnetism. That's it. It's just the thing that I am focused on. I'm literally outputting a magnetic field that says, bring me the thing that I keep focusing on.
Bring it back.
Or ruminating on. Do it again.
By the way, Dispenza does actually prove that it's a magnetic field that comes off of your heart that changes in frequency when you think about things or in one way or another.
That's
so
right.
on the most fundamental basis, if you're really having a hard time in one area, and let's say you are at this advanced level, but this area is still eating at you, it's like, maybe just force yourself to be grateful for something in that area. If you don't have something to be grateful, force an act.
Yes.
Go to the supermarket, dressed up and smile at 3 girls, come back home, be grateful for it, see where it goes from there.
Yes.
Because that's all we're trying to do is just shift that mindset into something else.
Yes.
And that's what you're doing on the very advanced levels. It's not as though it becomes more complicated to understand things. No. You're working at the things that you have in the most simplistic ways thrown out to be like, I don't even need to think about this anymore. And we're trying to bring those things back in and say, no, let's think about it for again. Let's change it, shift it, break it, and then move forward. Right. And so this is a scale of how these advanced techniques are going to be able to help you.
Yes. It's advanced awareness.
Right.
And the advanced awareness is actually responsible for the thoughts that are accumulating in your mind, that are circulating, that are creating the emotional response that you're having, that you're now paying attention to, and you're looking at it and going, life sucks because I feel X, Y, and Z. Or life is great because I feel X, Y, and Z. Or when I'm in the presence of this person, I feel X, Y, and Z. We're assessing our judgment of life based on how we feel, not realizing we're creating it.
And that's why 2 separate people can be in identical situations, and one think it's the greatest situation ever and one think it's the worst.
Yes.
You are dictating and defining your experience from your perception.
That's right.
And so when you change that perception and bring it to the God, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, that makes you comfortable, that's why we're saying bring it to this thing. Because if you're all up here if you're all in, the frontal cortex has one job and one job only: to identify a pattern and to help repeat it or never repeat it again. That is all the frontal cortex can do. It is like a computer, I's and O's. And deep down in your subconscious now, it's completely uncontrolled feeling and just going all out in highs and lows. And these two things are separated by what I would arguably say is your consciousness in the center, which is interpreting the two and finding more of what it wants.
Right. Which is why we need to have more selection of our thoughts. We need more selection of the things that we're engaged with. Right. Not to say that I have to put myself in a bubble and seclude myself off from society or shut down all media sources. Sometimes I do.
It's a good practice.
It's a great practice to sit there and actually put boundaries in, because if you do have a difficult time selecting your thoughts, you may have to detox from your external inputs. You may have to not watch TV or be on your social media platforms for a full week just to test how many thoughts are really yours.
And let me upset you further by saying, okay, I'm the worst at this, because every time I get some time where I have absolutely nothing to do, if the pool table's not nearby, I just go to YouTube, and those videos that are like 10 seconds.
Oh my God, the shorts.
And I just the shorts, and that's what I do. I go through like 100.
That's my death trap too.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say how that when you're watching social media, now an algorithm is in control of your thoughts.
Yes.
And then
yes, 100%.